Pontiac is unquestionably a storied nameplate in automotive history, producing vehicles such as Bonnevilles, GTOs, Catalinas, Grand Ams, Grand Prix, and numerous others that people remember often with fondness. It's hard to believe 12 years have passed since Pontiac was sunset, but the make still lives in the hearts and minds of individuals who own many of their vehicles, and quite a few people reflect on the brand with a keen fondness. That is, however, in general, for people who owned Pontiacs other than the 1988 to 1993 LeMans. And I must say, of all the great cars Pontiac produced in its history, this was certainly not one of them. I mean, what could go wrong with a car engineered in Germany, made by Daewoo in Korea, carrying a French name, sold in the United States? Well, as it turns out, quite a bit. Before this 1988 model was launched in the US, LeMans was a quite respectable brand name of Pontiac that was employed from the 1961 to 1981 model years on compact and intermediate-sized automobiles. It was originally a trim upgrade of the Tempest, but it became a separate model later on. The nameplate drove Pontiac to significant success until the 1982 model year when it was discontinued, in part because Pontiac was transitioning to more of a numeric scheme. You may recall the J2000, which later became the Sunbird, and the Pontiac 6000 were introduced in that year. Pontiac was also going to rename other models in its lineup, but that decision was short-circuited, although the LeMans was dropped overall, as mentioned, for the 1982 model year. In 1988, Pontiac revived the LeMans nameplate as it was looking for a vehicle to replace the sister to the Chevette, the Pontiac T1000, as the smallest model in the overall lineup. As part of this move, Pontiac shifted from the rear-wheel drive T1000 to this front-wheel drive vehicle that was made by Daewoo in South Korea. Now, before going on to pan the LeMans simply because of its diminutive size relative to previous LeManses, let's bear in mind that this Daewoo LeMans that was sold in the U.S., imported from Korea, as a Pontiac LeMans, was based upon a very successful car in Europe, the Opel Kadett. It was so successful, in fact, that just a few model years prior, in 1985, the Kadett was named the European Car of the Year. And the car was sold in a few different body styles, mainly in the U.S., the 3-door hatchback, which was called the Aero Coupe, and the 4-door sedan. There was also a 5-door hatchback that was offered in other markets. Under hood, a throttle body injected 1.6-liter engine of German origin produced 74 horsepower. In standard form, the LeMans came with a 4-speed manual transmission. Optional were a 5-speed manual, which was standard on the SE trim, and a 3-speed automatic. Partway through the 1988 model year, a larger 2-liter engine making 95 horsepower was released, similar to what was installed in the Opel Kadett GSI. However, unlike that GSI, this LeMans in GSE trim had only throttle body injection and made its maximum horsepower at a relatively low 4,800 RPMs. So what went wrong with the LeMans, and why might it be the worst car in Pontiac's history? Well, for a couple things, the car did not have a great reputation for quality. In particular, the front axles would tend to have trouble at relatively low miles. The air conditioning systems, where this car used a relatively large air conditioning compressor, would not only stress the engine and its 74 horsepower while being used, but in some cases the bracket that held the air conditioning on was so flimsy that it would also break, and the entire system would experience catastrophic failure. Customers also sometimes experience trouble with relatively high idle speeds on these vehicles, and in general some electrical gremlins. On the inside of the car, while the seat comfort was quite good and the interior was a rather handsome design, the materials just weren't on par with what customers had expected, even in this price class, with very hard plastics abounding in the interior cabin and quite a few squeaks and rattles in a number of vehicles. On the plus side, the car did get a number of things right, likely because of its Opel Kadett DNA. In particular, as mentioned, the overall seat comfort was quite excellent. The interior room for the overall car size was quite good. The interior sound levels for a subcompact car were also not bad, with Motor Week reporting 68 decibels at 55 miles per hour, which was a pretty good reading for the time. And also the handling was quite good, and the acceleration with the manual transmissions was not bad. Again, Motor Week reported a little under 13 seconds, 0 to 60, for a car with a 74 horsepower engine and a 5-speed manual transmission. Really not bad for the time at all. So despite a number of prevalent issues, the LeMans did have a number of attractive selling points that endeared it to some individuals. It just is one of those cars in Pontiac's history that really does not fit in the context of the overall lineup or in terms of what Pontiac was trying to execute for its strategy during the time. You may remember at the time that Pontiac's marketing slogan was "We Build Excitement." And by and large, the Pontiac lineup did have some exciting vehicles, particularly relative to the other General Motors divisions. And this didn't just pertain to the sporty Firebird, which was a great looker in these years, maybe not the most rigid of chassis. But whether you looked at the Grand Ams, the Grand Prix, the Bonnevilles, the 6000s, they all had some sporty trims or sporty flair to them. Think the Pontiac 6000 STE or even the STE all-wheel drive, the Bonneville SSE, later the Bonneville SSEI, the Grand Am SE, and the Grand Prix STE. I suppose that I could make the argument that the Pontiac LeMans offered from 1988 to 93 was better than its predecessor and certainly more sporty than the Pontiac T1000, but I think that would be a bit of a cop-out. In fact, this 99.2-inch wheelbase vehicle that measured only 65.4 inches in width and 55 inches in height really just was not up to American standards of the time, which is amazing to say in the context of what else was offered in U.S. showrooms. Customers that had stuck with the domestics during the malaise era and were turned off by them had already started changing their preferences and were looking more intently at import vehicles like the Toyota Corolla and Honda Civic. And against those vehicles, the Pontiac LeMans just didn't stack up. And it's for those reasons that I've named it the worst car in Pontiac history. It really had some great underpinnings and foundation in the form of the Opel Kadett, but something quite literally got lost in translation, as I suppose one should expect in selling a German-engineered car built by Koreans with a French name to the U.S. public. Hope you enjoyed this spotlight on the 1988 to 1993 Pontiac LeMans. Until next time, thanks for watching. Take care, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you. Thanks again.